Welcome to another edition of the Fanatics View Hockey Show. My name is James Lynch. Very happy today to be joined by one of my favorite reporters, someone I read all the time. I check out all of his stuff. He's one of the best prospect guys you'll find out there. Dave Hall of the Canucks Army. Happy to be joined here on the Fanatics View Hockey Show. Dave, how's it going?
Doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, excited to do this. I know we tried to make this happen last week at the last minute, but I definitely wanted to get you on, and you're one of my, like I said, favorite people to check out when it comes to to prospects and the Canucks. First, I just wanted to start with the overall look of the Canucks offseason. They made a lot of moves. There was a lot of players in, a lot of players out. What did you make of the moves, and do you think the Canucks are a better team or similar to what we were going to be seeing from last season?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely made moves. That's for sure. You can't fault them for that. It was kind of interesting. Like going into the off season, you kind of wondered what direction they were going to go. They had some money to play with, which is nice. Obviously, they wanted a little bit more speed up front and a couple other things. And by the looks of it seems like they went the way of the forwards. They obviously spared no expense on the forward group, and I think it's good. Looking at their lineup right now, like they've got depth. For the first time in quite some time, we don't know who's going to make this team. Like there's a couple spots, especially on that left side, that we just have no idea. And so, they didn't go out and get one big fish, but at the same time, they've got quite a few ads here that if they pop, they could definitely add some stuff. So I really like the forward group. I don't mind the stuff that they did on the back end. Obviously we like Zadorov, and I thought he could have been a good fit, especially when we find out what he actually signed for. But overall, I think they get a pretty good grade, and I mean, you can't really fault them on the forward group here. So
yeah, I completely agree. I like the moves they made. It's so interesting that they're so cap conscious with this regime, whereas last regime they were so reckless with it. Right, that was always the issue, is that they overpaid for players, and they were always in sort of cap trouble. And this year they've really sort of instead of, like you said, signing a big fish, they can get a couple different players to get those depth pieces as well. Answer me this question, because I haven't heard anyone actually give me like a good answer on this, and maybe maybe you don't, but all we heard in the offseason was that they were going after Jake Guentzel. And then obviously Tampa Bay swooped in, traded the third round pick. The Canucks don't have the luxury of, having picks and getting the rights and all that. But then Patrik Laine, the GM, comes out and says that DeBrusk was always their target. Do you believe that? Or do you think they did try and go after Guentzel, and once Tampa Bay made the trade, it was kind of like they didn't have a choice?
Nice. I like that question. To be honest, I don't know if I believe that. I have to think that they were going for a bigger fish, whether that was Necas, whether that was, whoever, Guentzel, whoever it was. I do think they did have eyes on someone. And, obviously now that they have DeBrusk, they want to make sure that they're, making him feel at home and like that he was the guy. But I have to assume that they were going for a bigger fish here. Not that DeBrusk isn't a big, like he's maybe not a huge fish, but he's definitely not small.
Yeah. Any concerns with DeBrusk? I know a couple seasons ago he had sort of that clash with Bruce Cassidy when he was coaching the Bruins. That's maybe the only thing I'd be worried about. I don't mind. I know people don't like the term, but I think that's kind of what you have to pay to get a guy like Jake DeBrusk to come to Vancouver. What do you think about his fit with, I'm assuming, Elias Pettersson? That's why they brought him in.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, yeah, you could be upset maybe with the term, but at the same time, who knows what this cap is going to? I think what he's making right now is pretty fit for the type of player that he is. He's going to combine, he's going to put some points on the board, but he's going to do more than that. He's going to be on your penalty kill. He's hopefully going to be on the bumper roll in your power play. He's going to bring a lot more than just, whatever the $5 million is, that he's bringing more. So overall, I don't have any concerns. And as far as him, asking to leave, I also don't really have many concerns. From what I've heard, this is kind of just me from going off of what I've heard off podcasts and all that stuff. It sounds like the situation wasn't wasn't great. And I think he thought that he deserved a little bit better, and he probably did. So, it's kind of funny. As soon as the coach is out, you don't hear him any of those concerns anymore. So I do think that issue was quite isolated, and there was a specific reason for it. So I'm not too concerned about any of that. And even with the contract, I think the contract is fine for what he is. I think in the long run, in 2 or 3 years, this could look like a really good deal.
One of the poll questions I put up for today's show, and I have it in the chat here if anyone is watching and you want to vote on it, but on the community tab I posted how do you think the Canucks will do next season? Do you see them sort of replicating the same success that they had last year? Do you see them being worse with some of the moves that they made, or do you see them being about the same, or do you think it's going to be a disaster? I don't think anyone really voted that. I'm looking on the community tab right now, and leading the way, 44% of people saying they believe this team will be better than last season. Are you in that camp as well, or do you think that we're going to see a similar run to what we saw last year?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is the Pacific didn't get any better. So at the very least, I think they're making the playoffs no matter what. I guess I shouldn't make those sweeping statements, but I think there's a very good chance of them making the playoffs here. Just looking at some of the others, specifically, LA Kings and, the Anaheim Ducks didn't get any better. San Jose is still a tire fire. So I think regardless, they're making the playoffs. I think overall, the forward group, I think they're going to score more goals. I mean, I'm very interested to see what they do with Daniel Sprong. That was kind of a spur of the moment move that I don't think anyone had on their radar. And I love it. This guy, obviously there's some sort of issues that we don't really know about yet. Whether that's character, dressing room, who knows, but he's proven that he can put this puck in the net. And so right now, just as a preliminary, lines, I have him skating with Jake DeBrusk and Elias Pettersson just to see what happens. I just love the idea of Daniel Sprong putting pucks in the net on that line. But I think overall, I think they're going to be a little bit better. Like I said earlier on their defense, I would have liked maybe one more puck mover. I think that's pretty standard across the board with most people. But I think overall, at the very least, their defense got bigger. They got mean. So that's going to be nice for playoffs. So I think overall, they're going to be a little bit better than what they were last year.
Yeah, a lot of things you said there. Let's start with the defense as well. I think the only concern I have, and I think a lot of other Canucks fans do, is that, if Carson Soucy goes down again, it's not going to look so good trying to bring other guys in. I know they have like Mark Friedman and other sort of depth pieces that they can add there. But I agree. I think that's something that could be an issue later on. You hope that Soucy's healthy because he wasn't a ton last year, at least during the regular season. The other thing as well that I kind of look at is, the Sprong signing. Like, you look at the teams that win the Cups, they get those team-friendly deals. Last year it was Florida with Oliver Ekman-Larsson. The Canucks have, this was not a thing a couple of years ago. You couldn't get players to come on the cheap to Vancouver because they just weren't having any success. So, credit to the management group for kind of creating that culture. And I think also selling the players on the coaching staff. It seems like Rick Tocchet and Adam Foote, that is sort of a selling point to a lot of these free agents or, I was going to say fighters because I'm in the MMA world, but no, players coming into the team as well. So I think those are some really key pieces too. Do you see a possibility, one of the things that we're kind of looking at is this Tucker Poolman thing. It sounds like they don't want to put him on LTIR. They want to utilize that cap space in either a trade or anything like that. Do you see that as a possibility where, let's say maybe things aren't going well or they have an injury or two, they utilize by putting Poolman on the cap and then getting that extra cap space? Do you think that's an option?
I mean, everything's an option at this point. I think they're definitely willing to do what they can to get rid of that space. But in this day and age, it's not very easy. So I personally don't see them getting rid of it without some sort of awesome package, like whether that's, a Brock Besser or someone like it's going to have to be a pretty sweet package. That's quite a bit of space right now. So, anything's possible at this point, but.
Let's talk about prospects. That's what you're known for. There's a lot of obviously really good prospects in the Canucks pool that it's pretty remarkable what they've been able to do since Patrick Laine and Jim Rutherford took over and building that up, because they didn't have any prospects before because, the previous regime was trading them all or trading picks. And so it was kind of bare bones down there. And obviously being in Abbotsford has certainly helped that situation as well, as opposed to being in Utica. I think the name that everyone's wondering about is Vasily Podkolzin. You signed Spong. You have, a lot of forwards that they have options for. I think most assume, and I would assume you feel as well, is this kind of make or break for Podkolzin this season, because I think we're, for a first round pick, you got to kind of show up at this point, I think, and show the coaches something more.
Absolutely. You hate to say it for a 23-year-old, it's a make or break season, but just given his pedigree and what, he should be doing at this point, I do think it's a make or break. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting for a few names, though. Like Niels Hoglander is another name with the Sprong sign that I don't, what happens with him, but specifically with Podkolzin, I think at this point we're pretty sure of what he is, and it's probably in the bottom six, at least to start with. And so he's going to be fighting out with Di Giuseppe and Kiefer Sherwood. And as of right now, we all loved what Kiefer Sherwood brought last year. So it's going to be a big fight for him. And, he's a bit of a weird prospect in that there's times where there's flashes where his true self comes out and he just looks like a beast on the ice. And, he looks like what we thought he can do, but then it seems like he's always unsure of himself. And my issue is there's just the offense. I'm pretty convinced that the offense just isn't there. I watched every single Abbotsford game last year, and although he was good and he was shooting a ton, and there was moments where he showed that he was that power forward that we're all hoping for, it's still, given his pedigree, it still just wasn't, that boom that we all had hoped, even at the AHL level. So I just think overall, we're probably, the top 6 days are over. And so we're just hoping that he can carve out that bottom 6. But I don't know. It's going to be a big battle for him. And as I mentioned, the same goes with Niels Höglander. I'm not really sure what they do. And I'm sorry if you're going to ask this, but I'm not sure what they do with Höglander at this point. Like, does he start with Pettersson and then Sprong's on the 4th line? Because I think at this point, you're probably safe to say that Garland's going to stick with Dakota Joshua, maybe.
Yeah, keep that line together. Yeah,
exactly. Brock Besser with JT Miller. So it's basically Höglander's either playing 4th line or 1st line, or with Pettersson, sorry. And, who knows what happens. So it's a good problem to have. It's a problem that we're not used to having, or for the club to have. And so it's going to be interesting. I don't know.
Well, and then my question then too is, like, how short of a leash do you think it is? Is it like at a training camp, you think we could see a trade? Remember that happened with Olli Juolevi a few years ago, where it's like, okay, we got to see what you can do. And they were just like, okay, enough's enough. We're going to trade you, Florida. Do you see it being that quick, or do you think they will give him a bit of time in the AHL and see how this overall season goes?
I don't think it's going to be right out of the camp. I think he's young enough and he's strong enough that they could probably keep him on the leash. I don't know if he'll go back to Abbotsford. I mean, he does have to pass waivers now, so
that's right. Yeah.
There's always do you want to lose him for nothing? I don't think so. I think he's still got some pedigree left. He's still young. I mean, we talk about make or break season. He's still a young kid. It's just, we at some point we got to see something, right? So I don't think they let him go right away. I think they let him marinate. If he doesn't carve out that 4th line role, maybe he sits on the bench for a little bit, and they have that in and out with Sherwood maybe for a little bit, and just see what he can do. And then if by trade deadline, I do think their ultimate plan, this is just my personal belief, is that they'll probably go after hopefully maybe a defenseman at the trade deadline, maybe carve out a couple more moves depending on how the season goes for them. And so maybe by trade deadline, whether it's Höglander or Podkolzin, those are kind of your trade baits that we're hoping that someone will take on that young potential.
Well, and the hope too is that they do kind of work out a bit, and maybe there is some trade value with either of them, and they're on such cheap contracts that could be appealing. Remember, that was one of the talks last year with Höglander. It's like, he doesn't cost that much, right? So if you're a cap crunch team, which a lot of teams are, that could be a bit of trade bait as well. So I'm interested with that. So we talked about Höglander and Podkolzin. Are there any other players you think it's kind of make or break in the prospect pool? Even on the Abbotsford side of things, we saw Aiden McDonough, the Canucks not qualify him. He's off to, I believe, Columbus. Are there any other players that sort of fit that mold that you think it's kind of make or break for them as well?
Not too much. I don't know too much for, the NHL side of things. Yeah. One prospect that I'm it's kind of make or break for me is Danila Klimovich.
I was just going to bring him up. Yeah.
Like it's a bit of a tough season for him. Like it's easy to just kind of crap on him and just say that, he's a bust. He's done, blah, blah, blah. But it's also kind of a tough year to gauge with him because there was some injuries. And while he was in the lineup, he wasn't very good. Full disclosure, he wasn't good. You kind of have to give him, I feel like you have to give him a bit of a leash from last year. It was a tough year through and through. No confidence. You could just tell when he was in the lineup, he wasn't getting a lot of minutes, and he just looked like a shell of a prospect. Night and day from what we saw the year before, though. What we saw the year before, when he's at his best, he's a pest out there. He's got a shot. He can score. Last year, Colleton didn't have him on the power play. In the minuscule little stretch that he was on the power play, he actually scored goals. That's where Klimovich has to be playing. From what I'm sensing from Klimovich is he kind of wears his heart in his sleeve. He seems like a bit of an emotional player. He needs to go through those ebbs and flows, and he needs to be picked up. So if he's going through a struggle, instead of either keeping him off the lineup or in a 4th line sheltered role with 6 minutes per game, you need to be playing him with the Arshdeep Baineses of the world and, getting him some goals. So for me, he's my he needs to have a big year down in Abbotsford. But in terms of NHL, I'm not too concerned with any of them. They're all relatively young, and most of them are kind of tweeners. As it is, you could say maybe Atu Ratu is someone that I would also like to see a little bit more. I'm personally in the camp that I don't believe he's ready for NHL this year. I do think he will be very soon. I didn't see enough of that driving play from him last year for me to warrant any. Looking at this Vancouver team, I just don't see any fit for him to just slide in immediately. So he's another player that I don't think it's like a boom or bust type season, but I am hoping to see a bit more elevated play from him this year as now a second year veteran on that Abbotsford team.
By the way, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Klimovich a Dan Milstein client? Because I heard someone say that there's no more Dan Milstein clients on the Canucks, but I thought he was.
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So not totally gone. Obviously, Kuzmenko and Ilya Mikheyev being shifted off. So the assistant, the joke about him being the assistant GM still is somewhat intact with that as well. What did you make of the hire of Manny Malhotra as someone who loved that 2011 team? I'm really glad to see him back with the organization. I think people also forget he was an assistant coach of the Canucks as well. So I think that's a great fit. What was your thoughts on hiring Manny as a head coach?
Yeah, love it. It's hard to knock that one. And, after talking to him, I got to speak to him at development camp, and he just seems to fit the bill. Obviously, as a new coach, everyone's going to say the right things and, give all their hopes and dreams at development camp. But I think it's a great hire. What I'm hoping for is that he sticks to his guns on, developing these players. It's kind of tough. I felt at the end of last year, the AHL is a tough place to be, right? Because it's a developmental league, but you're also still trying to gun for that NHL job. Obviously, we saw with Colleton last year, he goes out and gets that NHL job. So you wonder if there was a bit of him just trying to keep his job going last year, because there was a few times where I just felt there probably could have been a little bit more developmental in terms of where they are in the roster. You could just tell that they were probably going for some wins last year. So I'm really curious to see what Manny does just in terms of the makeup. It's going to be it's going to be a young team. Like there's a couple names that could make the roster that I'm curious if they will, and if they do, what they're going to be, where they're going to be in the lineup. Someone like Josh Bloom, Ty Mueller, those kind of, especially on the defense. We've got Elias Pettersson. We've got, we've got all these names that could be in the lineup. So I love the hiring. I think he's, he knows the organization. He knows all the developmental staff quite well. He's really good friends with the Sedins. And so I just think all in all, you're really getting the full picture here from top to bottom, from Vancouver all the way down to Abbotsford. Everyone's cohesive. And I think Manny Malhotra is just that last fit. He just slides right in my opinion. Who's
going to be the starting goalie in Abbotsford this year, do you think?
Tolopilo.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I say that with pretty some conviction.
You didn't even hesitate. So I'm just listen. You're the guy to ask when it comes to this stuff. I was sort of thinking that as well, but obviously they signed the prospect from Vegas, Yuri.
Patera.
Yeah, Patera. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, it still could be Shelov's. Who knows? Like maybe Patera does get the job. I mean, I think it's Shelov's job to lose, obviously, at the backup role. But I think overall, it has to be Tolopilo's net. I mean, at the same time, it is the AHL. So with given the back-to-back schedule of the AHL, there's no real starting goalie as it is. But I think if you need to start one goalie, it's Tolopilo, in my opinion. I don't think his season gets talked about enough last year because everyone's so focused on Shelov's, but he was quietly really good, and at times a lot better than Shelov's. Like yeah. I'm dropping my top 20 Canucks Army prospects right now, and Shelov's made my number 3. And I even mentioned in the article that if you asked me right before the playoffs, I would have said that you're probably going to see Shelov's maybe in the AHL for one more season, because he wasn't dominant all the year last year. Tolopilo actually stole the net from him for a good stretch there. So I think Tolopilo gets the starting job in Abbotsford, and it's his to lose, in my opinion.
And kind of tying that in, I think most Canucks fans feel like Thatcher Demko's playing too many games. We still don't know 100% if he's fully recovered for this upcoming season, but the big thing that we were all sitting there going is like, why are they starting him? Like, obviously you want to get those wins and you want to get, make up ground in the division, but I think a lot of Canucks fans are like, he is starting too much, and now you have this sort of lightning in a bottle with Shelov's playing so well last season. Like, I think it's a no-brainer. You do as much as you can with the split with Shelov's and Demko. Is that kind of how you see it as well?
Yeah, it just seems like that's the way the league's going, especially with Demko now. Now he's a repeat, like he's got a bit of an injury bug. He's been injured a few seasons now. So you really got to thread that line. And I do think Shelov's is worthy. I mean, let's see how he does,
Mm-hmm.
Get him in the 30. Let's split these up nice and even here. I agree. Like Demko, he has to be ready for the playoffs. So,
Well, and I think there's something to having a goaltender that you believe in and playing better. And I thought, DeSmith early in the season last year, Casey DeSmith gave them that. I think there was a lot of confidence there when he was there. But you just had a playoff run with Shelov's where he was a big reason why they were able to continue going in the playoffs. I think that's going to play a big role as well. And them, possibly going to him as a backup, because I think there's something to that. Remember seasons ago, it was a backup goalie graveyard. Braden Holtby, Halak, like it just Martin. What's his name? I'm escaping his name. Spencer Martin. That's what I was thinking of. It's just like it never seemed to work out in the backup spot. But last season with the Smith, it seemed like they finally had a good one. And I know they weren't able to re-sign him, but I think that the 1-2 punch of Seelovs and Demko could work out great if they just utilize it properly. I'm assuming you kind of feel the same way.
Yeah, and homegrown talent, right? Like someone that they brought up.
5th round pick, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like goalies are funny like that. Like when you look at some of the best goalies in the league, like a lot of them weren't high end picks. You know, we've got a lot of 5th round, 4th round undrafted. You know, like goalies are kind of that funny position. But yeah, I think he's an Ian Clark prototype, right? Like he's a homegrown talent. I think they believe him. I do think that they believe that he could be the successor of Thatcher Demko. So I think it's a great I think it's a great fit that they got going on right now. Thatcher Demko is the man right now, but he's aging soon. You know, hopefully within the next year or two, Seelovs can kind of take over that role, and I think it's a great fit.
Before we wrap things up here, we talked about obviously the AHL side of things. Are there any AHL guys that you think could get some NHL time this year? Like we saw Linus Karlsson last year, Archie Baines. A name that I don't hear a lot about anymore, and maybe kind of give me some insight on his season, is Akito Hirose. I remember he got games initially when they signed him. Haven't really heard a ton about him. Are there any players that sort of fit that mold of guys that could be call-ups this season?
Oh, totally. There's, in my opinion, there's quite a few names. One name that I've been basically on my pedestal knocking for months is Max Hassan. I just he was that one player in Abbotsford last year that on any given night, he was the most consistent. On every night he was driving play. He was the oil that made the engine go every single game. So I don't think he has like that high upside per se of some of the other prospects, Ratu, even Baines. But I just think if you're looking for a straight center who's going to play hard talk-it minutes, Max Hassan is your guy. I would love for him to get a look. Like I said, I don't think he's got that. I don't think he's playing second line minutes, but I think as a 4th, even maybe 3rd line center at some point, I would love to see him get some looks. Baines, of course. I could see Ratu getting a few games depending on how his season starts, just to see him go in there. I could even see Lekaramäki. Maybe they give him 9 games and see where he's at. I'm personally in the camp of wanting him to be in Abbotsford next season. I just don't why rush things and let him go. But he is a goal scorer. If they feel that he has a good camp and can score a few goals for them, maybe he does slot in somewhere in that top 9. But in terms of the forward groups, those are kind of my names. On the back end, you are right. You didn't hear a lot about Akito Hirose. That's mainly because he was injured for most of the season. Kind of like Klimovich. He had basically a write-off year. He finally got in some games at the end of the season, and he actually looked okay in the playoffs. But he is 25 now. I personally didn't see anything that I'm writing home about, and so I still think he's a viable option. I wouldn't be getting my hopes up in order. He's quite small, and it kind of showed last year. So, but we do got Elias Pettersson, DPD back there. I don't think he's going to be ready for the NHL per se, but he's a name. And he was my number 4 prospect in my rankings. And he's kind of a name that I say, we're upset that we lost Nikita Zadorov. He's kind of that next guy that maybe they're thinking he can kind of fill some of that void in the next year or two. He's a name that I'd be really keeping a close eye on.
And then another name as well. So we obviously talked about, Hirose and some of these other names as well, too. When you look at sort of the overall scope of the prospect pool, how would you compare it to seasons of the past? Like you sort of talked about it there. Do you feel like it's kind of the strongest it's been in recent years, just with what they've been able to do, Alvin and Rutherford?
It has to be. I mean, right off the bat, you have your 2 top 5 prospects playing in Abbotsford. That's something that we haven't seen a lot. Like we just haven't seen that top prospect play in Abbotsford or in the AHL, whether it's Utica or like they've been there. But right now we have, I'm just looking at it right now. There's like 9 to 10 names that are homegrown, maybe not homegrown, but young players that could have potential of playing on the roster at some point. Time and time again, we've seen just so many filler names that are good players, but they're definitely, that 25 and up kind of range. And, they're definitely tweeners. We know what they are. But right now we've got an exciting group in Abbotsford that's, some of these names could pop. You never know. And so at the very least, it's an exciting time to be an Abbotsford Canucks fan because you're going to get some young exciting talent. So I think in my personal opinion, it's probably the best it's ever looked, just in terms of youth and skill. But we'll see how that goes.
Any PTOs you think the Canucks will be taking a look at? There's still some names out there. I believe Tyson Barrie is still not signed by anyone. Do you see any names like that coming to camp and possibly trying to make the roster? I know it's pretty full right now.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And I mean, Tyson Barrie is a name that I am a little bit surprised that he hasn't gotten any looks yet. So I would love for Tyson Barrie to come in on a PTO. Like, I know, there's some knocks on him, but at the same time, he's only 33, and he's had some pretty high offensive pedigree. We do need puck movers on this back end, right? Or sorry, they need puck movers on this back end. So who knows? I haven't taken enough. I'm kind of blanking on some of the names that I'm really thinking of, but Barrie definitely seems like an interesting name.
Dave, what's coming up for you as far as like the prospect stuff? I know the season is approaching very quickly. It's July 31st, but I know things sort of get underway. We know we have the prospects, camp and all that stuff. Like, what's coming up prospects wise and also Canucks wise that people can kind of keep tabs on?
Yeah, it's exciting. It's that dog day of summer where I was laughing last night. I was kind of hoping to catch some of the Team Canada. We've got, obviously, the Canucks have Anthony Romani and Sawyer Minio playing for Team Canada. So they had their little summer scrimmage that I was hoping that they'd stream, but they didn't. And here I am in mid-July with my fists up wanting to watch scrimmage hockey. But no, so we got the summer showcase right now. Canucks have 3 prospects taking part in that, which is exciting. And then we're back to the dog days of summer for August. But yeah, we got Penticton early September. Obviously, training camp is in the same week, which is kind of nice. I don't know if I'll be there for training camp, but I'm going to definitely try to make it out for Penticton. And then we've just got the whole string of all the other prospects. We got NCAA starting, all the OHL, CHL leagues going to start up early or mid-September-ish. So yeah, we've got about a month more before it really starts to kick into gear here.
You mentioned NCAAs. You just reminded me. Tom Willander, we heard that there's an injury there. Anything serious? Do we expect him to be ready for the start of his season at Boston College?
Yeah. I, as far as I'm concerned, I've done a little bit of digging. It sounds like it's nothing to be concerned about. He's pretty much a guaranteed lock for that team, and you actually see it quite often. There's a few names that at the very last minute, I know Caden Lindstrom for Team Canada just got taken off and he won't play. Like, it's just one of those things that when you're pretty much a lock for the team, there's no need right before the season to go out and hurt yourself even more in a little scrimmage game that means absolutely nothing. So with Willander, he should be completely fine, and he's going to be the golden boy in Boston at Boston this year. So.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Dave, this was awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. Definitely got to get you back on at some point. I hate this time of year because you're probably like me. You listen to 650 and they got the Jays on. Like, I don't care at all about baseball. Give me prospect talk and Canucks talk as much as possible. I'm that guy who year round, I want to hear that stuff. So it was great catching up and hearing about everything going on. Just remind my listeners where they can get a hold of you on social media and anything you got coming out. And are you doing the prospect write-ups for the Canucks Army? By all means, the floor is yours, man.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me. I'm always happy to talk prospects. So if you ever want a guest to come on and talk prospects throughout the summer, I'm your guy. I'm like you. I like baseball. I'm a Seattle Mariners fan.
Same here, by the way. Not a Jays fan. Always Griffey was my guy growing up. So that I'm like a very casual fan in that way. But it's Mariners all the way for sure.
Absolutely. If you grew up on the West Coast and you're around my age, I'm 34. So you're a Griffin fan. You're a Mariners fan. Yes. Canucks Army, that's where I do all my work, and you can find me at Hall1289 on Twitter, and I'm just about to wrap up where we just dropped our second ranked prospect at Canucks Army today, so we're finally getting to that number 1, but go check out my top 20. I'll have a recap out in a couple days as well for that, and yeah, I'm just, catch me on Twitter. I'm basically everything and all Canucks prospects, so.
There we go. All right, Dave, thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll talk soon, man.
You as well. Thanks so much.
Take care. There we go. That's Dave Hall, Canucks Army. Loved getting him on, guys. I mentioned this off the top. I read Dave's stuff all the time. I read Dave's content all the time. I kind of fumbled my words there, but really, really good stuff there from Dave. Again, I love the prospect stuff. If you guys follow my work on the MMA side of things, I'm very heavy on the prospects when it comes to interviews and all that. Dave's kind of the equivalent of that over on the hockey side of things, so really enjoying that. If I got anyone here in the chat, let's get some questions. We got some stuff to get into. Like I usually do on here, let's get into some of the stuff that has been posted on on the Fanatics View channel. Again, not just one team. We've got stuff from everywhere. You can see some stuff here with the Predators, some more stuff. Neil Lundqvist interview we've got up there. Yanni Hapana, I hope I'm saying that right. My guy Taylor always putting content out even during the off season, so it's very important for you guys to go subscribe to the channel, check all that out. And like I said, I'm usually doing this show every week. We should mention, quick programming note, I will not be here next week. I'm going to be camping. So, we'll not be here for next week's show, but the week after I will be back and we'll get more talk. It's probably good anyways. There's not a ton going on news-wise as far as the hockey world right now, but let's get into some of the headlines right now anyways. Some big news that happened I guess last week, didn't get a chance because we were away last week, or I was away last week, was the hiring of Stan Bowman for the Edmonton Oilers. Very polarizing, obviously. There's, all the issues that happened with Stan Bowman when he was a member of the Chicago Blackhawks, the scandal. We know everything that sort of happened there. But they needed a GM, and I think, you can see kind of both sides of it. There's people who don't want to see Stan Bowman in the league anymore because of what happened with Kyle Beach. Completely understandable. I definitely understand those concerns from people that do not want to see Stan Bowman or Joel Quenneville ever be involved in hockey again. And then there's the flip side of it where he has been doing some work with Sheldon Kennedy. So some people feel like he has, taken the time, gone through the procedures, so to speak. He's been away long enough that that we'll see what he's able to do. So that's something to keep an eye on. The Oilers have got a lot of work to do in this offseason. They have, I believe, a couple RFAs that they need to sign, Dylan Holloway being one of them, Broberg being the other, and then also they got to see what they're going to do with Leon Draisaitl. I'm already seeing some reports that Leon Draisaitl is going to be re-signed by the Oilers to something like an 8-year deal. Nothing concrete there, but that's something to maybe keep tabs on as well. So there's that going on. We'll get to some more news in a second. Just want to double check that the questions are coming through here, guys, because just on my end, I'm not seeing a ton, but that could be an issue with the StreamYard as well. Let me just double check here, guys. Okay. So looks like everything is all good. But yeah, like I said, if you guys have any questions related or not, would love to hear from you guys. Playing a little bit hurt today. Got a bit of a cough, but what are you going to do? Patrik Laine, here, let's look at some news here. Patrik Laine, seemingly ready to get back to action. I know he was dealing with some personal issues, things like that. So obviously the question is now, could there be a change of scenery? Columbus has a new GM, Don Waddell. They have a new coach in Dean Evison. So we'll see if there's any takers for that. The contract's kind of big though, 8.7, I think, a season. Maybe if a team could take, if Columbus keeps some salary on that, maybe that could be a good destination. Kind of my view on the Laine thing is, I think if you are going to trade him, it's got to be a team that, like a Chicago or San Jose, that has the cap space. I talk about this all the time. One of the most valuable assets in the NHL is cap space. There's a lot of teams that don't have that. I think even with retained salary, Laine is certainly a good player, and he's not that old. So 26 years old. So he would help a team that maybe needs some offensive, to sort of boost the offense a bit. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if they do decide part ways with him, because obviously it has not worked out. I mean, how crazy is that Laine, who was traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois now on another team, it just seems like these are two players that have not really worked out in their certain lineups as well. Dustin Wolf getting re-signed by the Calgary Flames, sort of knew that there. It'll be interesting to see how Calgary does this season. They were definitely in seller mode last year. Of course, they lost Jacob Markstrom. We'll see how they're going to be looking there as well. What else do we have? As far as other that, Evgeny Kuznetsov leaving the NHL, signing in the KHL. We know his documented problems in Washington. Of course, he was dealt to Carolina at the deadline, and obviously feels like greater things are ahead in the KHL. Not too surprised by that. What else do we have in news here, guys, as I'm choking to death? This is what we do. We play hurt here on the show. Goalie, hope I'm saying that right, signing a 6-year, $33.3 million contract with the Canadiens. It's a bit of news there. 22-year-old defenseman. What side is he? Is he a right shot? If he's a right shot, I can understand them locking him up. Right shot defenseman, those are very much important in the grand scheme of things. He's a left shot defenseman, but still 22 years old. He was taken 16 overall by the Canadiens in 2020. Going to lock him up as well. Canadiens are a team to keep an eye on as far as their prospects pool as well. Colin White might be done in the NHL. Let's have a look at this. The third straight summer, Ottawa Senators 2015 first rounder Colin White is on the market. His phone is not ringing. This is what that could be another potential PTO, as we were talking about earlier. There's a lot of names. Ooh, actually, let me just see if there's a free agency, free NHL free agents 2024. Is there a tracker? Do we know who is available? Top remaining free agents. I think this article, that was back in July. Okay, here we go. So here we go. Look at some of the names here. James Van Riemsdyk, 35 years old. Again, he's another guy that I think could get possibly a PTO or a lower contract there. Tyson Barrie, who Dave just mentioned here on the show, I think would be an interesting fit with the Canucks. He's, again, puck moving defenseman, and Barrie's from British Columbia, so that's could be intriguing as well. Tony DeAngelo. Is Tony DeAngelo still not signed? I thought he was signed. Guess not. I mean, this article is from a couple days ago. So DeAngelo, he's right shot defenseman, 28 years old. I don't see why anyone would not want to pick up a right shot defenseman. I know there's a bit of controversy with him as far as, him in the locker room and all that. We heard some of the stories with the New York Rangers. He's a guy I might take a look at for some teams. Tyler Johnson, famously from Spokane, on the market right now. Again, another guy who's not going to get his $5 million that he had in previous seasons. Kevin LeBlanc, I know someone the Canucks were linked to at one point. Remember there was that rumor about him for Tyler Myers last year? He's a guy that could be on there as well. Mike Hoffman out there. Oliver Clington, he's another PTO guy I've heard about as well. Max Pacioretty, good veterans presence, 35 years old, could be an option there too. Justin Schultz, former Pittsburgh Penguin, maybe he's an option for the Canucks as well. I believe he's also a BC guy, or at least from Calgary, I think. No, he's from Kelowna. So there you go. He might be another option. John Klingberg, who was a disaster. He's a guy that didn't play his cards very well. Remember, he held out to try and get a big contract, never came, and then he signs that 1-year deal with Anaheim, I think, right? And then it didn't work out, and then he ends up in Toronto, and it also doesn't work out, right? I'm not mistaken. Didn't he go to Anaheim? Yeah, he did. Just double checking that. Yeah, just the one season with Anaheim, and didn't really pan out. 47 points with the Stars, and then just 24 with the Ducks. Didn't really work out there. Kevin Lankinen, Nick Cousins, who's a bit of a pest. Antti Ranta, I don't know if he'll get any work. I believe he's on waivers last year. Then this one always stands out. Philip Zadina. Always remember Philip Zadina for the Detroit Red Wings taking him ahead of Quinn Hughes when they could have had him. 6th overall in 2018. Yikes. Look at this. Philip Zadina leads way to Quinn Hughes going to the Canucks. And the weird part was Hughes played for Michigan, right? So you'd think that he would have gone to Detroit. That would have seemed like that made sense. So some interesting names here. Let me know in the chat if you're watching this, who are some players you would like to see signed with your favorite team. I think some of these are some interesting options. Look at some more news going on. We talked about some of the moves. I think we did about, we talked last week or 2 weeks ago with Andrew Stein about obviously Chychrun going to the Capitals. Be interested to see how the Capitals do this season with some of the moves that they've made. Obviously making some big headway as well. What else do we have as far as NHL news? The Utah Hockey Club doing a summer analytics challenge. I think that's a good idea. Here's one we missed. Brock Faber signing an 8-year, $68 million contract with the Wild. They got to lock him up. Curious to see, are there any, what are the top RFA NHL 2024? Let's look at some RFAs that are there. Swayman's a RFA. I didn't know that. So again, this is good. This is why we're doing the show, to kind of get caught up on everything. Jeremy Swayman, 25. I didn't realize he was that young either. He's going to get a bigger hit than 3.4. He's one of the best goalies in the league. I could see him getting, I don't know how much he'll get. I wonder if, I need to see the Athletics projection model of how much he's worth, but I would think 6. Is that a number that we're looking at there? Morris Sider, that's one too. 23, defense. Definitely going to get a big raise from that. It'll be a couple million for sure. Lucas Raymond also in Detroit. So Detroit's got some work to do. And they didn't have a very good offseason. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. They got to lock these guys up. Who else do we got? Seth Jarvis, Carolina. They did just re-sign Netchus. I always pronounce his name wrong. Martin Netchus. So Jarvis is the next one. 22 years old, right winger. Again, right winger is very valuable on the market. Thomas Harley, another player for Dallas. They've got to do that as well. Matty Beniers is up too. He didn't have, I think last season was a year, if I remember correctly. But he's very good. Definitely one of their potential stars for the team. So last year, just 37 points last year, down from 57 the year before. So he'll be looking to make some noise. He's going to get a nice bump too. Cole Perfetti, that's someone too that, again, these guys, that's what sucks is the cap space, not much. Darcy Mercier, that's one too. Mercer. Cole Sillinger is another one, 21 years old. Peyton Krebs. Man, there's a lot here. I'm pretty sure Broberg is on here too. I don't think Broberg got re-signed. Let me just double check. Edmonton Oilers. We have to use Puckpedia now because obviously no more cap friendly. Let's see. So they don't have any cap space, and they still, I believe, have to re-sign some guys. Full roster breakdown. Yeah, Broberg's an RFA, as is Dylan Holloway, and they're over the cap right now, so they're gonna have to trade someone. I think they did lose. What was it, Warren Foegele? I saw they re-signed Corey Perry, Connor Brown as well. But yeah, they are over the cap, right? So they're going to have to figure out something with the trade or something along those lines. So very interesting there. But anyways, back to Brock Faber, which is what we started with. You can see they're an 8-year, $68 million contract, $8.5 million, which is higher than a lot of the other players. But 21 years old defenseman. I believe he's right shot. Let me double check that. Yes, he is a right shot defense. Again, this is as good as gold. This is like buying Microsoft in the 90s, re-signing Brock Faber. So, and also finished second in the voting behind Connor Bedard. So this is a guy that certainly is worth every penny. So, but the Minnesota, I've talked about this before. Let's go look at their cap situation. They're an absolute cap hell because of those buyouts. Actually, I guess they technically have $1 million in cap space, but they're still paying off, what's his name? Ryan Suter. Ryan Suter is being paid by 3 teams right now. Dallas, St. Louis, and Minnesota. 7.3. Yikes. Until 2028. Zach Parise as well, they're paying off. It sucks. I mean, it's good for the player, but it's not like the NFL where you can just, get rid of someone and then, that's everything. So there's that. What else do we got? Let's look at some more NHL news. Oh, here we go. Net just signs they only signed for 2 years. Ooh, $13 million. So he's getting, 6.5 a season? I guess that's fair for them. But he'll be he'll be a UFA, I think, by then, won't he? He's a restricted free agent, is filed for salary arbitration. Let me check that on Puckpedia. I believe that would make him a UFA. Let's check this out, guys. So they got 6.4 in cap space, but like I said, they got to sign Seth Jarvis and some of the other players as well. So, whoops, full roster breakdown. I know some people don't like Puckpedia. I don't mind the interface. I think it's fine. So where are we here? Netchus. Yeah, he'll be a UFA. So you get 2 more seasons out of him, and then it's either trade bait or I suppose that makes sense. I mean, he didn't seem very happy there. Remember, his dad came out and said he wanted more playing time. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. Before we get out of here, because I'm going to wrap this up here shortly. Not a ton going on, as you can imagine. It's July 31st, well past free agency opening up. But I'm curious to look at Detroit's cap situation with the pending RFAs that they have. Oh, they got $17 million in cap space. Wow. So they're fine. Wonder if they'll be making any moves here in the next little bit. Boston, I'm curious about them because, again, they got to re-sign Swayman. How much space do they have? They have $8 million. Okay, so they're fine too. Let's look through some of these other teams that definitely need to add some more cap space. What are the Canucks at, by the way? Because if they don't put Pullman on LTIR, I think they're fine. Yeah, they only got 15,000. But if they put Pullman on LTIR, they get a couple million in space there too. Some of the other teams, who are we looking at here? Carolina, I mentioned. They got lots of cap space. Dallas, what's their cap situation like? Don't think they have much. $6 million. Okay, so they got a little bit to play with. Seattle, I think they still got a bunch, don't they? Or did they? I know they signed a bunch of free agents too, but $6 million. Okay, that's decent. But some half of that's going to go to Beniers, if not more. So they got to be careful. And who else? What are some other teams? They have to sign Winnipeg. What's their cap situation? Like they did shed some by trading or buying out what's his name, Nate Schmidt. So they got $5 million, so they're all right. And who else? New Jersey. What's their situation like? $4 million, so not a ton. Dawson's going to definitely get a bump from his league minimum. Columbus, where are they at? Columbus Blue Jackets signing Cole Sillinger. Are they in good shape or not? Let's see. 10 million. Yeah, they're fine. Buffalo, what's their situation like? They got a couple, they got rid of Jeff Skinner, so that clears up some space. Yeah. So there we go. Okay, so that's very interesting there, guys. All right, well, I don't think there's any questions in the chat. Again, I know we're doing this July 31st. Just another reminder, guys, I'm going to be off. Well, actually, no, I'll say this right now. If you guys have any questions, just post them. We'll definitely get to some questions here. Don't be shy. I'll answer any question you want, hockey-wise. That's totally cool with me. What else? As well. Yeah, if you got any questions, ask that. Otherwise, I'll wrap things up here today. Again, I will not be here next week. I'll be here the week after. I'm going to be on a little vacation, so we will be back. I'm sure we'll have some tough stuff to talk about. Again, like Dave mentioned here on the chat today, things are going to get underway here pretty soon, right? We've got August, and then once September rolls around, that's when camps are going to start to get in action, and then before you know it, it'll be the regular season in October. So a lot going on there. So it looks like we don't have any questions today. Big shout out to Dave Hall for coming on the show today. I'm going to try and get another guest on maybe when we return. I'm thinking maybe we'll do the Leafs next, get Stephen Ellis back on the show if he's available to talk about the Leafs offseason. And if there's any other guests you guys want on, I will do my best to make it happen. Definitely want to do that going forward with the show is get some more guests on here. So that would be a big help. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got today, guys. A little bit of a shorter show, but that's going to happen when we don't have a ton to talk about. Again, you can follow me on Twitter @LynchOnSports. Yeah, again, subscribe to the Fanatics View channel. I will be back in 2 weeks. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll talk to you guys soon.